Hey, welcome back. When we last left off, the Livonian Order had been preparing for a rather ambitious military campaign to its east. This push eastward met with failure, however, and the Livonian Order was defeated in the Battle of Lake Peipus, also known as the Battle on the Ice, in 1242. And yes, that means exactly what you think it means. The overconfident forces of the Livonian Order decided to cross the largely frozen Lake Peipus, which nowadays forms the border between Estonia and Russia. Desperate fighting took place for a little over 2 hours on this icescape until the Livonian Order and their Danish allies began to retreat in disarray. During an attempt to regroup on the lake's far side, the thin ice supposedly gave way, resulting in a number of men drowning, weighed down in their heavy armor. This, however, is disputed as there is no mention of it in original historical sources. Whatever the case, the army of Novgorod and Pskov, led by the Novgorodian prince Alexander Nevsky, had unquestionably defeated the Livonian Order and therefore stopped their expansion east. And this was welcome news for the Novgorod Republic, which still had to deal with the Swedes and, in time, a Mongol invasion. Thanks to strong fortifications along the border with Novgorod, a counterattack by the Republic or its allies likely could be easily repulsed, but from now on the Teutonic Order, and by extent the Livonian Order, would focus on expanding southward. It's that time again to remind people to go ahead and hit the like button. As always, I find that just asking people to do so helps our videos do a lot better. So, if you're interested in more videos like these, it's a quick thing you can do to help them out. Their new target was Semigallia, which strategically was quite important for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the Lithuanians frequently passed through Semigallia in order to raid settlements in Livonia, and therefore controlling Semigallia would, in theory, deter the Lithuanians from continuing to do so. Secondly, Semigallia sat right in between the Livonian Order and the Teutonic Order, which meant the two branches didn't have a direct connection by land. This, of course, made it difficult to provide military support when needed, although just a year prior Courland had been conquered, which just almost provided a land connection for the two branches. So, by 1272, Semigallia was conquered. But due to a series of uprisings and pressure from the Lithuanians, the territory was split between the Livonian Order and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania the following year. And speaking of Lithuania, in 1296, a civil war broke out between the citizens of Riga and the Livonian Order. The Archbishop of Riga, Johannes III, initially tried to mediate the crisis, but eventually joined the citizens of Riga. In March 1298, Riga, however, negotiated an alliance with the Grand Duke of Lithuania, Vytenis. This enraged the Livonian Order since Lithuania was a pagan state and the target of an ongoing crusade. Nonetheless, Lithuanian forces soon invaded Livonia, capturing the castle of Karkus. This was followed by the Battle of Tsardom in June, and while it initially looked as though the army of the Livonian Grand Master Bruno was going to win, reinforcements from the Archbishopric of Riga soon arrived, shifting the tide of the battle. This allowed Vytenis to lead a counterattack, and yet again it was a decisive blow for the Livonian Order. Grandmaster Bruno had been killed, along with somewhere between 22 to 60 knights. The civil war in Livonia was not yet over though, and soon reinforcements from the Prussian branch arrived, defeating the residents of Riga and their Lithuanian allies near Nyalmun. Riga itself was captured shortly thereafterwards. Not content to sit on the sidelines, Eric VI of Denmark threatened to assist the citizens of Riga, but before this came to pass, a truce between the Order and Riga was reached. Fast forward to 1343, and yet another rebellion had broken out in the lands controlled by the Order. Yeah, so you might be thinking, wow, that's a lot of uprisings. And yeah, it was. There were many uprisings, and while most of them were rather insignificant, they were occurring, or reoccurring, with a worrying degree of regularity. This one, though, in 1343 was not insignificant, and came to be known as the St. George's Night Uprising. Essentially, it was an attempt by the indigenous Estonian population on the island of Oselvik to rid themselves of Danish and German foreign rule, with rebels capturing the castle of Poide and massacring its garrison. The Livonian and Teutonic orders, working in tandem with the Danish, had, by 1345, managed to suppress the rebellion. But just a year later, in 1346, the Danish king decided to rid himself of the troublesome Duchy of Estonia, selling it to the state of the Teutonic Order for about 10,000 marks. The Teutonic Order now possessed the whole of Estonia and later gained the bishopric of Revel as well. However, following a violent dispute with the bishopric of Dorpat in 1379, the Livonian Order lost the ability to demand military service from the various bishoprics, which in turn dramatically weakened its capabilities. And, if things couldn't get worse, the new personal union between the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and Kingdom of Poland in 1385 shifted the regional balance of power in a way that did not favor the Teutonic state. Lithuania would, in time, lend its support to another rebellion against the order, which sparked off the Polish-Lithuanian Teutonic War. The Lithuanians were led by Grand Duke Vytautas the Great, the Polish by Władysław II, and the Teutonic Order by Grandmaster Ulrich von Eugenen. What followed was one of the biggest battles of medieval Europe, the Battle of Grunwald, which is also known as the Battle of Tannenberg. The exact number of soldiers involved here varies greatly. Some accounts, such as those of Karl Hivekar and Hans Delbruck, estimate the Polish-Lithuanian force was around 16,000 to 17,000 men, while the Teutonic Order had about 11,000. But there are others like Alfred Nicholas Rambud, who estimate a Polish-Lithuanian force of about 163,000 versus a force of 86,000 men for the Teutonic Order. So, yeah. The first estimate is probably more reliable, but the fact was the combined armies of Poland and Lithuania were bigger than that of the Teutonic Order. So their victory in 1410 was perhaps a foregone conclusion. That being said, the utter devastation it brought upon the order was not something anyone predicted. Out of 270 Teutonic brothers who participated, 203 to 211 were killed in battle, brothers being a kind of elite force within the order. Most of the order's leadership was also killed in battle, including the Grand Master. And, following this defeat, the Teutonic Order went into an unrecoverable decline. But, while the Teutonic Order was basically defunct after 1410, the same cannot be said for the Livonian Order. Things had definitely changed though. There were not a lot of new crusaders arriving in the region, and many of the formerly pagan countries, including Lithuania, had converted to Christianity. So there was not really a huge recruitment pool for the order. Because of this, they increasingly had to rely on mercenaries, which was rather expensive and likely facilitated a steady decline. The Treaty of Thorn in 1411, which formally ended the Polish-Lithuanian Teutonic War, required the order to pay reparations, adding to their already pre-existing financial woes. Then, in 1432, the Livonian Order was dragged into an ongoing civil war in Lithuania over the succession of the now-deceased Vytautas the Great. During the Battle of Wiłkomierz in 1435, the Western Grand Duchy of Lithuania, with backing from the Kingdom of Poland, won a decisive victory over the Eastern Grand Duchy of Lithuania, supported by the Livonian Order and Golden Horde. And yeah, that's a really short version of events here. Heavily weakened by yet another loss, how many is that now? Well, the Livonian Order tried reproaching the bishops of Livonia. And, in December 1435, the bishops of Courland, Dorpat, Alsowik, and Revel, alongside the Archbishop of Riga, representatives of the Livonian Order, and city representatives from Riga, Revel, and Dorpat, signed the Livonian Confederation Agreement, which united all those mentioned as one state. Their focus was not expansion, but rather survival. The Grand Duchy of Muscovy was rapidly expanding and now threatened the borders of the newly formed confederation. In 1501, war came, but following a Lithuanian victory at the Battle of Lake Smolensk in 1502, peace seemingly was secured for a while, at least. But just as soon as that occurred, a new problem arose, the Protestant Reformation of 1517. This damaged Catholic unity across Europe and in turn saw the Prussian branch of the Teutonic Order secularize in 1525, which meant the Livonian Order within the Livonian Confederation lost further support. Skipping ahead to 1557, the Confederation, having survived a civil war, now faced an existential crisis as its eastern neighbor, Muscovy, now rebranded as the Tsardom of Russia, threatened invasion yet again. The Livonian Confederation sought help from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which actually made the situation worse, as Ivan IV, Tsar of Russia, saw this as casus belli for declaring war, since a treaty from 1554 specified the Confederation was not allowed to seek an alliance with the Commonwealth. In 1558, the Tsardom invaded, and the Confederation was able to counter some Russian offenses. Meanwhile, they managed to convince Lithuania to join the war effort. In exchange, they had to concede a significant amount of territory. All was for naught though, because in 1560 the Confederation was defeated in the Battle of Emrije, which basically saw its entire army wiped out. Just a year later, the remaining Livonian territories, now mostly under Lithuanian rule, were secularized, thus bringing an end to the order. The Livonian War, however, continued until 1583, but our story ends here since the original pseudo-state tied to the Livonian Brothers of the Sword and their predecessors ceased to exist. There was a Russian puppet state known as the Kingdom of Livonia, which existed from 1570 to 1578, but that's a ghost country we might cover in a future episode. Until then, if you want to learn more about this period of time, check out our videos about the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and yeah. As a reminder, if you enjoy content like this, be sure to go ahead and hit the like button. I also highly recommend subscribing and hitting the bell icon as well, so as to be notified when new videos are released.